Listen, I want to take the time out to make sure I say this to everybody, each and every person. If you are listening, if you see this video, if you hear what I'm saying, this is for you. This ain't for the person who didn't hear it. This is for the person who did hear it. Okay? Maybe you might know this information, but you need to be reminded of this information to be able to relay the message to somebody who did not hear it. But we live in a world where people are so easily offended, okay? And people might not always show you or tell you when they might be offended. I'm one of them kind of people who knows how to hide an offense. I do. Somebody can offend me left and right. And I usually leave it up to myself to know when it is important for me to display my feelings of offense. I usually don't tell people that they offended me unless they are important to me. You know what I'm saying? Unless it matters to me that this person know where I'm coming from, then I really don't care that somebody knows when they said something that offended me. You know what I mean? But we always want to take the time to understand why we might be offended, because sometimes we might be offended for reasons that are an even bigger problem than the offense itself is. You know what I mean? We might have an offense specifically because somebody was trying to tell us what the Bible said, and because we don't read our Bible, then we don't know that's what it meant by what it said, and we might grow to be offended rather than just picking up on the knowledge. You know, we might be offended because of something wrong with us and not something wrong with what somebody else said, right? So we always want to ask ourselves, what made me so offended at what this person said? You always want to ask yourself that. Don't first go and hang the person for offending you without asking yourself, what was so wrong with what they said that I got offended about that? You know what I mean? But the main point of this message here is, before I'm cleaning carpet in here and I got a light in the background so I can see. But the main point of this message here is, before you decide to grow offended at what somebody said, you want to make sure, especially if you know that you are an easily offended person, you want to make sure you take the time to investigate what they meant by what they said. Okay? You always want to do that. There's 1.5 million reasons why somebody's words can come off to us differently than how the person meant them to be. A lot of times people accuse people of doing what they felt like about what they did rather than what they did. Listen, it happens. Sometimes people can get accused of doing what somebody else felt like about what they did rather than what they actually did. So you always want to say this: if I wrote this person's words down on a piece of paper, what part about it should I get offended at? But sometimes a person might say something in a certain tone of voice, and we take their tone of voice offensive instead of just listening to what they're saying. You know what I'm saying? You don't want to be an outer shell person. Like, you don't want to be an outer court person. Like, you want to be a little more deep, but not so deep to where you dumb. Because you can be deep in a way that make you dumb, and you can be shallow in a way that also make you dumb. You always want to have some balance. You got to know when to think deep and when to think a little more shallow about stuff. It's called being fluid. You want to be more of a fluid person. You know when to move up and when to move down in your perspective about things. You don't want to just be deep or just be shallow about any and everything you hear. You don't know the number of people who think everything that happened or everything they hear or everything they see is some kind of inspiration from God. You know what I'm saying? Some stranger walked up to me and told me something. Oh, that's got to be the Holy Ghost. Don't think like that. That's just so deep to where you just go dumb. Because I've had strangers come up to me and tell me that I don't have to ask somebody for forgiveness for something I did wrong to them. Somebody literally told me that. This person came to me, a total stranger out of nowhere. He saw me at the park praying, and he just came to me out of nowhere and started talking to me about Jewish history and all this other stuff, and how him and his son got kicked out of this church and all of this other crazy stuff. And I was telling him about something I was going through at the time. This was like 5-6 years ago, because that's when I first met the Lord, and I had a lot of repenting to do of things that I didn't even know I did wrong. I didn't even know it was wrong until I opened up the Word of God, and I'm like, man, I might have to come clean to this person and tell them about this and that. And it's like, no, you don't got to do that. No, don't do that. And I'm sitting there thinking like, but what if God is telling me to do that and you telling me to listen, don't think too deep about everything, because thinking too deep about everything can cause you to be an offended person. You always think somebody is meaning what they not saying because of how you process information. Everything is not that deep and everything is not that shallow. You need to know when to adopt what point of view, because you can literally miss the point of everything just being, one kind of a way. You know what I mean? Like there's a time to make a joke and there's a time to be dead serious. There's a time to laugh and there's a time to cry. There's a time to live and there's a time to die. You just need to know when is that time, But you always want to take the time to investigate what somebody meant by what they said if you grow offended at what somebody said. Sometimes people really are trying to offend you, and they will make you sound like an easily offended person just because they want to get away with talking to people any old kind of way. It happens all the time. Don't think that because I'm saying this that I don't know how it is. Some people believe that their ability to offend somebody is also their ability to be real. You know what I'm saying? And you will see this a lot. A lot of people preach the gospel, believing that their ability to offend the listener is the same unit of measurement of how much the Holy Ghost is using the speaker. You get people like that. People think that if you want to get your point across to people, then you need to just be real and just be blunt and offend somebody. They think as many nerves as I strike is as good as I'm doing. You know what I'm saying? You will get that. But unless you know how to fluctuate your point of view, then you won't really be able to pick that up. Like you might be too shallow to where it blow right over your head. And you might be too deep to where you take it too personal. But you'll still get that. I kid you not. There are people who do that. There are good people who have times when they do the wrong thing. And just because somebody might have done something or said something with the intention of trying to strike a nerve, or with the intention of trying to offend somebody or beat somebody into submission with their way of words. Like just because somebody do that once does not automatically write them off as just 100% evil. People have different things that happen throughout their day that might set the volume of their attitude. You know what I'm saying? Like if I had nothing but roadblocks and backed up highways and traffic and I didn't eat on time, there's a high chance that I might respond to somebody with the wrong tone of voice, and it will have nothing to do with them. You know what I'm saying? It's a high chance stuff like that happen, and you want to be able to fluctuate your point of view to make room for what if they didn't mean it like that? What if something happened before they started talking to me that already gave them a bad mood? What if they weren't really trying to offend me? They were mad at something else entirely, and it just came out like that. It happens like that. But the last point I want to make, and this might not even be the last one, but the main point I want to make here is to make sure you take the time to investigate what people mean by what they say, because not all of us are from the same culture. Not all of us grew up in the same household. Not all of us had the same kinds of parents. Not all of us had the same kinds of cousins. Not all of us had the same kinds of friends in school. Not all of us had the same kinds of role models, influencers. Not all of us watched the same kind of TV shows. You know what I'm saying? And sometimes we can associate a certain combination of words with negative emotions just because of the last time you heard that, or just because of the movie you watched when somebody said that. You know, I'll give you a perfect example. I can almost guarantee you, there is some woman somewhere and some man somewhere where if that man called that woman and said, hey, I'm going to be working late, the first thing she might say is, he cheating. Why? Because that's what they say in the movies. That's what they do in the movies, right? So somebody can associate, hey, I'm working late with the thoughts of being cheated on easily. Like that's a good one right there. You know, but like, what if there was nothing about what he said that sounded anything like, I'm going to go cheat? You know what I'm saying? Because it didn't. But sometimes we could just associate a certain combination of words with the wrong emotions, and people didn't really mean it like that. You know, what is something somebody might grow offended at? Okay, when I was a salesperson, okay, I would try to talk to certain people inside the store, and some people would look at me with the worst attitude in the world and say, I don't have time for this today. So I got one option or the other. I could either leave them alone and blow it off, or I can get offended. Why? Because they looked at me with the most stank face on the planet and said, I don't have time for this today. You don't know what is going on in that person's life that made them say that like that. But what they really meant to say is, I'm in a hurry. My son just got admitted into the hospital. I still need to get to the gas station. And these people in the store have been talking to me all day long. You are like the fifth person that came up to me. I keep telling everybody, no, I'm not interested. But yet people still keep walking up to me, and I'm in a hurry. The line is long, and I still didn't find what I came here for. That's what they really meant. But you just won't really get the opportunity to know that. You just got to be able to look at stuff from another perspective, right? So I give you a perfect example. I give you a more realistic example, right? And this is the example that really kind of made me think about this today, because there was something that got said yesterday. Okay, I don't mean to talk about kids all the time. Well, I don't mean to bring kids into it, but my stepdaughter, right? She said something that her friend said. Okay, and he said, but this ain't the first time I heard this. I probably hear stuff like this 105 times a day. But he said, man, I left my hangout to come here, or I left hanging out with whoever I was hanging out to come here because we invited him to the zoo. And the first thing she thought was, well, if you don't really want to be here, go back home. And I had to stop. I'm like, wait a minute. Me being a guy, especially had been a teenage boy before, I know what he meant by that. He meant That it was such a big deal for me to hang out with you that I left all of this behind just to come and hang out with you guys. That's what he meant. But like sometimes we can associate a certain combination of words with the wrong emotions based on the last time we heard that, or the last time we might have personally said that, or just the way we might process information, or maybe it was the look on his face. Maybe he could have smelled a fart in the middle of that, didn't want to say all that, and had this look on his face when he said that, but it was just too much going on in the middle of that. You know what I'm saying? So he just couldn't really, like, you know, he couldn't slip that in too. So he just, like, you know, it could just been a look on his face. Like maybe somebody could have walked by that looked funny to him, gave him a funny look, and in the middle of him talking, his face changed. You know, I mean, but I don't know if it was his face. All I know is what was said about what he said. And I had to stop. I'm like, well, I'm glad you didn't get mad at him for that, though, because because the first thing I thought was, I can guarantee you probably took that the wrong way. I bet you did. I bet you did. And I said it. I said, man, you probably think, well, if you really don't want to be here, then go back home. You're like, yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. I'm like, that's not what he meant. He didn't mean it like that. Well, when he said, I left my hangout to come here, me being a guy, knowing how we might word certain things sometime, he really meant that it was more important for me to be here with you guys than for me to be where I was at first. That's what that meant. But sometimes we really just need to take the time. Ask questions. Discerning intentions can save you a lot of headaches. Understanding those intentions can save you some heartache. Yes, you want to sometimes, if you cannot discern intentions, and discerning intentions is not a skill you can learn. It is a gift that God gives you. God will give you the gift of being able to discern where somebody might be coming from about what they said. And that can be a little difficult on the person who might have been the one you had to discern, because they could have made sure that they got their rude point across in a nice enough way to where they can still be rude, knowing that you might not take it that way, but you can see the intentions behind what they were saying and you still took it that way. And they like, well, what did I say so wrong? All I said was, and you like, no, it ain't about what you said. I know what you meant. It's not about what somebody said. You can't be so carnally minded. You can't be in the flesh about everything, because it's not always about what somebody said. It's not always about what somebody's facial expression was. You have to be able to understand a person's intentions behind what they're saying and what somebody meant behind what they're saying. Because just like he said in the comments, that can save you a lot of headache and a lot of heartache. It really can. And it can save you from just deceiving yourself. Like sometimes somebody might be welcoming you with open arms about something, but because they didn't say it twice, or they didn't bug you, or they didn't drag you there, or they didn't say, I can't wait for you to get here 2 times in a row, sometimes we might think that we just ain't welcome to be around. And it can always be, just bad experiences that you might have had personally with other people. And you can look at everybody through that lens of your own bad experiences. And sometimes we can't afford to look at everything through the lens of our own experiences, because first of all, that's lazy. Second of all, that's mentally shallow. And third of all, that's deceiving, because you can deceive your own self. If looks can be deceiving, words and tones of voice can too. If looks can be deceiving, then your own thoughts about it can too. And you need to just, before you engage in any conversation, you need to just have that on the front of your mind. The Bible says that we walk by faith, not by sight. And if we walk by faith and not by sight, that means what? our five senses, which is hearing, taste, touch, smell, and seeing, right? Those can all be manipulated at will, especially if you got a demon. Those can be manipulated at will. So God don't call us to walk by what it sound like. God don't call us to walk by what it look like. He don't call us to walk by what kind of taste it put in our mouth. He don't call us to walk by like what it feel like. What it feel like is a big thing, because sometimes we can judge everybody through what they made us feel like. We really can. And this could be the most life-changing person in your life, and because they made you feel like something, you had to judge them eternally through that lens. If you want to walk by your feelings, if you want to walk by what it looked like, and if you want to walk by what it sound like, the devil is the best God you can have. I kid you not. He will make you feel stuff. He will say stuff. Man, he'll even give you an appetite for stuff you would have never liked. You know what I'm saying? If you want to walk by your five senses, the number one thing you don't want to do is you don't want to stay that way and hang out amongst the people of God. You don't even want a Christian friend if you want to just live by your five senses and you don't want to change. Because I guarantee you they're going to say something that might make you feel a certain way, and then you will beat them over the head about how you felt instead of what their intentions were. You know what I'm saying? Like the number of people that I told, like what was something I said that a lot of people got offended over? Like how I told somebody that tithing was not a New Testament commandment. Somebody got bloody offended about that because they said, well, I've been doing that for years and you mean to tell me that it was wrong? And I said, no, it's not that it's wrong. It's just that it's not correct, that that's something that you're required to do to get into heaven. You know what I'm saying? And this person had no desire to want to know what the Bible say. So they didn't even take the time to go and see if what I was saying was right. They had no desire to want to walk in the Spirit. They just liked going to church. You know what I'm saying? They had no desire to want to serve God, no desire to want to receive the Holy Ghost, as long as they got a chance to feel good for a couple hours and then go back home with nothing but a good feeling. You know what I'm saying? So you want to understand this, because if you don't, this is going to frustrate you half to death. Right? You can't even walk by logic, because what sound like makes sense might be the most deadly thing you can do. What sound like don't make sense might be the best thing you can do. If Moses walked by logic, he would have never threw the stick on the ground and seen it turn into a snake. If Moses walked by logic, he would have never waved his staff up in the air and watched the river part. If Moses walked by logic, he would have never went to Pharaoh to say anything, because it wouldn't have ever made sense that Pharaoh would have ever listened to him. Long story short, Pharaoh did not listen to him, and I can bet you he regretted it. But it wasn't to get him to listen to him. It was just to get Moses to do what God said. That was it. God knew Pharaoh wasn't going to listen to him. You can't do nothing about that. And that's another thing. If people get offended at what you say and you didn't mean it like that, you can't feel personally responsible for the response you get. You know, what if Moses felt personally responsible for the fact that Pharaoh didn't listen to him? Moses probably wouldn't have went back, right? You can't feel like you are responsible for the responses you get, because I can guarantee you what you might have said will stick with them, and eventually it'll make sense. But they'll never come back and tell you that what you said made sense. They'll just start acting like they believe you out of nowhere. In fact, they might turn around and post that same thing on Facebook as if they knew this all this time, and they got bloody offended at you when you said it. You know what I'm saying? They might turn around and reshare somebody's post that says the same thing, but didn't want to receive it from you. And sometimes it's all about who somebody might be. Who a person is might reflect on how you take them. Like, you know what I'm saying? Who somebody is might reflect on how you take them. There's a lot of women who would not listen to their man about what the Bible said, but they'll listen to the pastor about it. But there's a lot of men who would not listen to their woman about what the Bible said, but they'll listen to brother so-and-so about it. There's a lot of kids who won't listen to their parents about what their parents are saying, but they'll listen to their teacher about it. All because of what? Well, I was there when that person wasn't perfect. I was there when that person made a mistake. So there's no way they could ever be right about anything. You can't have that at the front of your mind, because God would even send a donkey to tell you what to do. God sent a donkey to tell Balaam that he was wrong. And Balaam sitting there beating the donkey. And the donkey had to tell Balaam, like, hey, man, like, you're doing the wrong thing, man. God will send any and everybody to tell you something. And if you look at people based on who they are to you, the information they give you could have a color to it that they didn't give it to you with. You know, sometimes, you know, we like to put colors on people's words. We like to put colors on people's intentions. We like to put feelings behind what somebody said that they didn't give it to you with. And that is going to cause people to not make the improvements mentally and emotionally and spiritually that they need to make, you know. And oftentimes there is no physical sign that somebody's growing mentally, spiritually, or emotionally, but they do process information differently. They do manage their feelings differently. It wasn't until I got saved that I learned to manage my feelings differently. When people used to do things that was out of spite to me, I used to take it personal. I used to go back on the attack with them. I used to play tit for tat with everybody, especially when it came to stuff like business. When I seen people trying to compete with me, I would take that so personal, and I'd be the biggest competitor that they wish they would have never had. Like, but now I don't let stuff like that get to me. Like when I see somebody trying to do or say something out of spite to me, what that sounds like to me is this. Well, most of the time when people do things that's intended to persecute, offend, or belittle me in some kind of way, a lot of times that signs off on the fact that I'm walking with God, because it's like sometimes I look at like what they're doing, what kind of person this person is, and I can discern what they mean by what, and I might even double check to ask them what they mean by what they said, and they still, well, and I just sit there and I say, okay, all right, so I know I'm not crazy then. All right, so I know I'm not crazy. If you know somebody is crazy and they telling you dead wrong, and you know that they don't know what they talking about, that's confirmation that you doing something right. You know, that's confirmation that your mind is not carnal but spiritual. A lot of times that's confirmation. That might even go as far as signing off on your place, on your identity with Christ. All you got to do is just hear what they saying, see what they mean by what they say, and look in the Bible and see the last time that happened. Oh, the last time that happened to one of the prophets. You know what I'm saying? The last time that happened to Jesus. The last time that happened to the apostles. And you mean to tell me the same thing going on with me? See, when people do things with the intention of offending you, if your mind is spiritual, that can have a good effect on you. Some people don't know how to see it that way. People perceive so many colors in my communication when most times it's black and white. Very frustrating. Yes, Some people really don't know how to hear exactly what somebody said and just roll with that. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know why or what happened, but I noticed that this started happening, or I started noticing this around maybe 2016 or so. My mind just kind of changed and shifted, and I started noticing that black and white is not enough for a lot of people. You have to be either trying to be mean, and it's like, no, I'm not trying to be mean. Like I know personally that me saying this to you might cause you to hate me, and I don't want you to hate me, but at the same time, I know that if you keep walking your life out like this, you're going to go into the pit. You know what I'm saying? And you just don't want them to. And you had to put your own feelings aside. You had to put your own willingness to want to preserve your image to people aside. You had to put your own reputation of being such a nice person to them aside and tell them the most life-changing things that they needed to hear. And they just take that as you trying to offend me because you don't agree with how I see it. You know what I'm saying? And sometimes we got to understand that just because somebody don't agree with how we see it does not mean that they're wrong or trying to be mean or telling you that you're stupid or just anything like that. Because I can't put a percentage on it, but a vast majority of things that anybody has ever learned, they learned from somewhere or somebody. And there's a lot, there's a huge part of that can be things that you came up with, conclusions that things that you hit upon and discovered. But a huge part of what anybody has ever learned, they learned from somewhere or somebody. And this is just another piece of that. Like, you know what I'm saying? But other than that, I just want to take the time to make sure I say this, because the Bible said that in the last days, many will be offended. They said in the last days, many will be offended. Offended about what? It didn't say. It didn't say. Usually about the gospel, usually about soul-saving things, usually about, self-development, self-improvement, stuff like that. But the Bible said that we're going to reach a time when many people will be lovers of their own selves, loving pleasures rather than God. Many will be offended. Many will be headstrong and haughty. Headstrong is somebody who you can't tell nothing to. Like, you can't tell me nothing. Like, you know what I'm saying? The vast majority of headstrong people, they always think they're right. They can't hear what anybody has ever said. They can't learn anything. Nothing can come in. And they sure ain't never got nothing, nothing juicy to say unless it's about somebody else's business. Nothing goes in, nothing comes out. They are ruled by the king of pride, who is Leviathan. Leviathan's scales are so tight that no air can come through and no air can come out. And that's how people who are ruled by pride are. You can't tell them nothing, and they ain't never got anything important to say. Anytime they think they got something important to say, it's just as dumb as a box of rocks. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's like, so you pulled me aside in this hallway just so you can talk to me about something that stupid. Like, it's like the last time I tried to tell you the one thing that'll help you live differently in your walk with God, you just blew up through a stick and just stormed off. Yeah, offending me. It's like, hey, listen. Being offended is not always a bad thing. Sometimes we have to be offended because we might have an area of pride somewhere that something or somebody is going to have to be used by God to break through. You have to accept being offended sometime. You have to have good emotional management. Without good emotional management, things that are meant to improve you will always break you down. Always. everybody seems like everybody want to be the kind of person who nothing can break. Everybody want to sound like the most unstoppable person in this world, up until they get offended about something, up until you don't agree with them about something, up until you don't see it their way, up until that point. Everybody believes that they're a strong individual, up until somebody don't agree with them. You got to be cool with not being agreed with. You have to. You have to be okay with not being agreed with. You know why? Because at least you see it that way. It ain't your life. Like, it ain't, like, you know, it ain't you that's crazy, at least. Like, you know what I'm saying? You got to be cool with that. And you got to learn how to just see it that way sometimes. It might sound mean, you know, but at the end of the day, what more can you do about that? Just blew my mind with the Leviathan thing. Yeah, man, somebody actually taught me that, to be honest. I heard that from one of my pastors. I'm like, I didn't even see it that way. I never understood why the Bible took the time to talk about Leviathan scales like that. You know, like nothing can come in or nothing can come out. It's like sometimes when the Bible takes the time to mention such a small detail, it really means something very important that we might not be looking at sometimes. But other than that, I got to go ahead and get this carpet cleaner running. I was just, like sometime when I spray down floors, I got to give it some time to sit. So that way the chemicals and stuff like that can work. And so I got to get on to it. I think I might have waited long enough. And I don't want to have this extension cord through this person's window forever. So I will catch y'all on the next one. Thank you for listening. Please share this video if you want to. If you don't want to, that's all good. Because like half of the time, man, God might only intend for me to contact one person. Like, you know what I mean? Like I have no desire to want to be somebody, you know, who everybody listen to or anything like that. So like, you know, like the few people that do share my video, you were probably the only person who I was intended to talk to anyway. So as long as that happens the way it is, I thank God, and y'all have a good, blessed day.